Summer is right around the corner. If you know me, you know it's not really my favorite season for a lot of reasons that I won't get into. Something I can get into, though, is that the folks at Mint Mobile say that getting a summer bod is out and getting your savings bod is in. This spring and summer, Mint Mobile wants to see your skimpy wireless bills and fat wallets. Premium wireless plans for just $15 a month. You can have both without breaking a sweat or the bank. Say bye to your overpriced wireless plans with jaw-dropping monthly bills and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is going to rescue you. All Mint Mobile plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. The best part is that you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with you. Ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for $15 a month. This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get your summer savings and shop premium wireless plans at mintmobile.com/diaries. That's mintmobile.com/diaries. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5GB plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
My parents did an incredible job of helping me build healthy associations with money. It wasn't just about learning numbers, it was about understanding how balance and intentionality shaped our financial lives. Those early lessons set me up for success and helped me navigate the real world with more confidence when it came to money. And it's a big reason why I'm so excited to share today's sponsor with you, Acorns Early. Acorns Early is a smart money app and a debit card for kids that helps them learn the value of money. Kids can spend what they earn with their very own debit card. They'll love the new sense of independence and getting to choose from 35 plus customizable card designs. Plus, parents can keep track of where and when their kids are spending. You can get real-time spend notifications, set your kids' spending limits, and instantly block lost or stolen cards. They might not realize it now, but starting to invest early is going to have a huge impact on their financial future. And the best part? It's simple. And Acorns Early is such a smart, accessible tool to do that. If you're looking for a way to make a real difference in the financial future of the younger people in your life, Acorns Early is an amazing place to start. Ready to help your kids learn the value of money? Just head to acornsearly.com/diaries or download the Acorns Early app to get started. Sign up now and your first month is on us. T&Cs apply. Monthly subscription fee starting from $5 per month unless canceled.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
Welcome back to the Murder Diaries. I'm Paige.
And I'm Natalie.
As always, if you would like to listen to this episode ad-free, you can do so on patreon.com/the Murder Diaries pod. This week on the Murder Diaries, we're thrilled to have a very special guest who's been behind the scenes of some truly incredible podcasts, including some of the episodes of the Murder Diaries. Joining us today is our friend, Haley Gray, a dedicated researcher, storyteller, and advocate whose work has shaped many of the shows you know and love, again, including the Murder Diaries. Haley has contributed to the research of countless podcasts, digging deep into the facts, uncovering hidden details, and ensuring these stories are told with the utmost accuracy and care.
Haley is also one of the board members of the Bridegan Foundation, which brought the Bexley Box project to life. This nonprofit was born as a result of the senseless murder of Jared Bridegan, a case we've covered here on the podcast, and it aims to provide support and resources to families impacted by violent crime. Haley is also involved with Light the Way, an organization dedicated to guiding families through the overwhelming process of getting exposure for unresolved cases. Haley's work goes far beyond research, though. She's committed to justice, advocacy, and helping others navigate difficult paths. Thank you so much for being here, Haley. We're excited to dive into the projects you're working on and just the overall impact you're making in the true crime space.
Oh my gosh, what an introduction. I feel like a rock star. Thank you so much. Thanks for that. And thanks for having me.
Of course. I mean, so well deserved. Honestly, you're one of the most hardworking individuals I've ever met. And I'm just constantly awe-inspired by the way that you go above and beyond for everybody that you come in contact with. So
Thank you.
much deserved.
I appreciate it.
Hey, we didn't even have to stretch to give such a glowing introduction. It was not hard.
Oh, thank you.
Of course. I think a great place to start today would be if you could tell everyone a little bit about how you first got involved with true crime. Like, was there a particular case or event that inspired you to dedicate so much of your energy and time to it?
Yeah, so my journey has been kind of interesting. In May of 2016, I started a podcast with my former co host, Lindsay. That was kind of before the big boom in podcasting. There were very few podcasts. And we got into it because we had been listening to an episode. I guess let me back up and say that we worked together. And so we would listen to like the same podcast and then talk about them. And we heard a podcast about Lacey Peterson. And I remember coming away with a bunch of questions about it. And I was like, there's so much more out there about this. So I went and did my own research. And then I told Lindsay, I was like, we should have a podcast where we really do like a deep dive into the research. And so that kind of started the whole podcasting process. It was so different back then. There were no like guides on starting a podcast. I taught myself how to code so that I could like build an RSS feed. Like it was way different. There were like very few microphone options. It was just completely different. It's the wild, wild west now, but it was like wild, wild, wild west back then. I started just having my own podcast. I was going to school I had hoped to be a therapist. I was doing my undergrad and I was finishing up my classes. You have to take certain classes if you want to get into being a therapist. So I was doing that. And through my schooling, I learned how to do deep dive research. And so I just kind of applied that to the podcast. And then that ended up coming to an end. And then the friends that I had made along the way were starting to make money in podcasting. So they were like, hey, we hate researching. Can you please do that for us? We'll pay you. And I was like, sure, I love researching. And so it kind of just went from there with me just doing projects for people. And then I was kind of the only person doing it. There was one other person, but she was like more official than me. She had an agent and would work on like TV shows and stuff. But for the most part, it was just me. And so my name got around. And then it got to the point where I didn't feel like I could go on to get my master's because I was too busy with researching. And then I quit my full-time job to do it. And then long story short to how I got into advocating, about halfway through my career, one of my good friends, Amanda, she is a friend I've had since before podcasting. She's like an in-person friend. Her grandparents were murdered in an extremely crazy way, like made for TV, absolutely wild way. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, how would Amanda feel if a podcast was made about her grandparents? And that was like my first time kind of experiencing that. And so that really opened my eyes to things and made me start questioning what I was doing. And then I told the Moms and Mysteries ladies, Melissa and Mandy, that I wanted to start working on unsolved cases. And they were like, okay, because by that point I started working for like the Murder Squad with Paul Holes. And so I had experience working on unsolved cases. And I was like, I need to be doing more with my skills and things like that. And so they were like, okay, we don't really have the experience, but you do, so it's okay. And I've always felt like this was so kismet. Like there are a few things in my life that I'm like, this was meant to be. And this is one of those situations. So Melissa from Moms and Mysteries was like, well, I think we already have our first case that we'd like to work on. And she was like, I've been getting messages from this woman saying that she'd like us to cover her husband's murder. And I was like, okay. And it was Jared Bridegan. And I get goosebumps every time I tell the story. They just washed over me. And I was like, okay, I go and I check my personal Instagram DMs. And back then, people didn't reach out to me personally because I just worked for podcasts and I didn't have much of a presence or anything online. she had messaged me and asked me to cover Jared's story on a podcast. So I was like, oh my gosh, like we absolutely have to do this. So that was our first ever family that we worked with, and it changed our lives. And ever since then, Kirsten has been such an important person in my life. And so is the rest of Jared's family. And she has really encouraged me, saying that, I was great to work with. I had like this process that I started and all these things. So it's grown from there. But those are the two catalysts that really brought me into victim advocacy, and then just wanting to grow more and more and become a better advocate for families and learning more. And so that's where I asked Light the Way if I could work with them. And they brought me on as their first volunteer, which was really nice. Because for a long time, I was like, when I was working with families, I was like, okay, I can help you with a podcast episode. But then I was like, it kind of didn't go anywhere after that. I would still check in on them and things, but I was like, there has to be more that I can do than just a podcast episode. So then I started working with Light the Way, and they taught me the different things that they did. And then throughout that time, I started growing my confidence and things like that. And then I decided that I wanted to become an actual credentialed victim advocate so that I could learn more. And also, I feel like it helps approach families when they know that they feel more comfortable. So that's kind of where things have been. It's just ever growing. I'm trying to always become a better advocate. And I kind of think of myself more as like an advocate now than a podcaster. So it's been an interesting 9 years. I'll say that.
It really shows the beauty of the true crime community. And I say that realizing the seriousness of it. But there are a lot of people within this community that are willing to help and teach others how to be a better advocate, how to create a better platform for these families. And I really love that everyone you encountered was so willing to share their expertise, because you've taken everything you've learned from everyone else and you've been able to teach others as well. And so it just is a ripple effect of this knowledge spreading that's just going to help other people in the future. I've definitely learned a lot from you over the years that we've known each other. And I'm really grateful. And I don't think it can be underscored enough how essential it is to at least educate oneself on proper ethics when working in true crime.
Yeah, I think that's sometimes really hard for podcasters because maybe they feel like they're doing something wrong. And it's not necessarily that you're doing something wrong, it's just that you could do something better. And I always think that we can grow and we can be better people. I feel like I'm a better advocate today than I was on January 1st, 2025. Like you can grow every day and learn from your experiences. I think that it's important that people at least try and, like you said, educate themselves, because this field is changing. It is completely different than it was 9 years ago. 9 years ago, there was maybe one show about unsolved cases. Everyone was just talking about the big cases and serial killers, and things have really evolved since then. And things are going to continue to evolve. And I think people need to be willing to learn and to change, because that's important.
I could not have said that better myself. We too have felt the evolution and have actually participated in it ourselves very naturally, coming to certain decisions of this is what we want our show to be and how we feel we can use this platform to help and to amplify families' voices and to amplify cases that need more awareness and assistance in that realm. And just going from how we started, very 2016 style, to where we are today. So we felt it and we kind of participated in it. And hopefully we'll continue to evolve in the best way possible and grow as well as a podcast. Because as you mentioned, there's space for all of it, but what else can we be doing and how can we do it in the best way possible? It doesn't mean turning 180 degrees and doing something completely different, but how can this platform act differently, be different, and continue to be better? And I'm curious if throughout this evolution, has your process changed, whether it's for research or like, as you mentioned, more than like a podcast or content creator at this point, you're identifying more as I'm hearing as an advocate, which is beautiful. And that there's a process to what you do every day. How has that maybe changed? Like, what did it look like and what does it look like now?
It is completely different. And again,
I bet.
it's still ever evolving. I feel like I'm constantly looking at my process and seeing how I can do it better. Back in the day, I was just researching on Google, like, what can I find about this case? And then just making notes. I, of course, did deep dive research, and that's always been what I've been known for in my specialty. And then I grew from there to newspaper archives and things like that. And I have a training program where I teach people how to research. But one thing that we talk about in the program is that you want to start, like, you go through the newspaper archives day by day, starting on the day that the crime was reported, whether the person goes missing or they are found. You start going day by day and you can really see how the story unfolds and you can get a lot of detail that way. So I've gone from, just Google to newspaper archives and then going to interviewing families. You always learn so much when you interview families, just so much more than what's out there in the media. Sometimes you learn what's in the media is incorrect. Sometimes you learn that maybe they made something a bigger deal than it actually was. It's really interesting to talk to families and learn the nuances of a case. That's kind of where I'm at now, is trying to work with families as much as possible. I feel like even that is evolving. When I first started, I maybe would ask like 10 questions, but now it grows to the point where I have to do like 2 separate interviews with families because I just ask
Wow.
too many questions because their story hasn't been told enough. You know what I mean? And we really need to learn about this person and share who they were and things like that. So I love interviewing families. That's my favorite thing to do. I love getting to know who the victim was, hearing, their loved one's favorite stories of them, and just seeing their loved one like brighten up when they get to talk about their loved one. And I just really love that. And also just learning from families. I feel like I have learned so much from them. And it's very interesting to see these families. I work with over 30 families right now, and they all collectively have very similar experiences with the things that they feel and the things that they tell me, but then they also have major differences. And so it's very interesting to kind of compare what each family is going through. And my process has changed a lot. I would say that it's still very deep research, archival, things like that, but then also a lot of trying to get more information from families and then incorporating all of that together. And another thing I'm really passionate about, and if you follow me on social media, you'll see that I also share like advocacy tips for families. And one thing that I just posted the other day was that I like to use my tools. Like, I have Ancestry and newspapers.com. And you can use that and help families, right? Like, I've been able to find yearbook photos of a victim that the family has never seen, And so it's like 34 years after this woman was murdered, her family is seeing new pictures and they forgot that their loved one was in the high school choir. So then they see this picture of their loved one. They're like, all these memories are coming back. And like, just one search on Ancestry like helped this family. So I really encourage people who work with families, if you have access to resources, to help families with that. If you have newspapers.com, find newspaper articles on their loved one and send them the PDFs. Like, it takes maybe an hour of your time, but it means the world to these families. So I would just say that my research is becoming more family focused and like, what information can I find that would be helpful for them? Or, filing FOIA requests. Like, that's not something I ever did before because I work for so many podcasts that I can't really focus on FOIA requests. But now when I'm working with families one-on-one, I'll say like, I'll send off the FOIA request. And if we get it, like, I'll send it to you. So it just keeps growing.
Spring is here, and it's time for some spring cleaning. HomeAglow is here to deliver consistent and affordable support for you, too, to get your spring cleaning done. HomeAglow is a top-rated service platform dedicated to making your space clean and tidy. Their website allows you to book online, which allows you to instantly schedule a cleaner in your area for a special occasion, that party you're getting ready to host, or just to book some regular help to take some things off your plate. What's comforting is that cleaners have to pass a rigorous certification process, and they also have to maintain a 4.8-star average platform rating. We know you're going to love your cleaners, so make sure you rate them really well too. HomeAglow is also a fantastic way to support the cleaners in your community because 100% of the cleaning fees and tips go directly to the cleaner that you hire through HomeAglow. With that, we are so thankful that this episode is brought to you in part by HomeAglow. Now let's talk about their Forever Clean membership. Schedule your cleaning by simply going to HomeAglow's website, choose the day and time you're looking for, and how long you want the cleaner to clean for. Then you'll get matched with a cleaner. You can schedule as quickly as this week or get something on the calendar for next month to check it off your to-do list early. On the website, you'll be able to check out photos and reviews of background checked cleaners before booking the right cleaner for you. The best part is that Forever Clean membership we talked about, which saves you $30 an hour on all future cleanings. You can book unlimited cleanings starting at $19 an hour, backed by HomeAglow's happiness guarantee. HomeAglow services are only available in the US. Take cleaning off your plate by using HomeAglow. Head to homeaglow.com/diaries to get your first 3 hours of cleaning for only $19.
Summer's here, and you can now get almost anything you need for your sunny days delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a well-groomed lawn delivered, but you can get a chicken parmesan delivered. A cabana? That's a no. But a banana? That's a yes. A nice tan? Sorry, nope. But a box fan? Happily, yes. A day of sunshine? No. A box of fine wines? Yes. Uber Eats can definitely get you that. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you, you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/credit card, based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Hey, Fidelity. How can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, that sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant. 9.5 plus pH, now in cans.
Refreshing.
Made for every way you move.
Should I run a marathon?
Let's start with finishing that water. Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant, now in a sleek can. For those with a taste for taste. Grab yours today.
For our listeners, a FOIA is a Freedom of Information Act request, just in case there's someone out there that doesn't know. And they are quite extensive to file, and they can get costly. Yes. So it can take time. It can take, it's a financial impact. It definitely adds value though. And it's really nice to be able to get your hands on them when you can. Just hearing what you were saying about the involvement with families and finding new information that they may not remember or hadn't seen before. It reminds me of, there's a family that you and I are both working with currently, and even just conducting an interview with this woman whose son was murdered. She found out information about him that she didn't know for 30 years because in preparation for this interview she was going to have with me, she reached out to his girlfriend at the time and found out, he actually proposed to this girlfriend and the mom didn't know for 30 years. She said she just was crying when I spoke to her because she was so happy to know that her son was able to have that moment, even though it never eventually got to a wedding because his life was taken before then. But these families are able to uncover things that maybe they hadn't thought of in a long time, didn't know. It is nice to be able to help them find these stories about their family members. But, working with families can be really emotionally intense. And that's something that I've realized, and I'm sure Paige has realized, and you've realized as we work with more and more families and we are uncovering more cases in depth, there really is that like balance of how do I keep myself emotionally safe, when you're working and researching with all these different cases. And so that's something I would be interested in hearing your perspective on.
That's a great question. I often wonder this about myself and how I'm able to kind of handle all of this. And I think definitely compartmentalizing. And like I said earlier, I wanted to be a therapist. So I've always been good about being able to hear like really tough stuff and being able to not be affected by it intensely, I should say. I am very affected when I talk to families. Sometimes I cry. Sometimes I'm emotionally drained when I'm done. Mostly, I feel like I'm fueled by their motivation, if that makes sense. Seeing how motivated they are. And then also thinking, like, with the mom that we're both working with, she's been doing this for 31. It was just the 31st year this month when we're recording.
Mhm.
So for 31 years, she's had to get out of bed and deal with this every day. And so I'm like, I can do it too. But some ways that I protect myself, I don't listen to true crime when I'm not working. I do listen to the episodes that I research and write just because it helps me keep in tune with what the host ended up keeping, maybe if they reworded something, those kinds of things. I work for one podcast, Detective Perspective, which is hosted by Derek Levasseur, who is a former detective and a current PI. And I love listening to his podcast, even though I do the research and the writing, I know what he's going to say, but he throws in his detective perspective. And that is always fascinating to me because what I think he's going to focus on sometimes is not what he focuses on. And so that's really helpful to me from like an investigative point of view. I'm like, oh, I never even thought about that or things like that. But for the most part, when I'm not working, I am listening to, I'm a huge improv comedy fan. I love Comedy Bang Bang. They have a network called Earwolf. I listen to anything like that. And then I love watching silly shows. Like I go to sleep watching Bob's Burgers every night. I love animated stuff like that, The Great North, Futurama, those kinds of things. And then also I love Good Mythical Morning on YouTube. I don't know if anyone knows. I love Rhett and Link. It's my partner Ben is always like, "Why are you watching this? It's just two grown men in their mid 40s like eating snacks and talking about them." I'm like, because if you did what I did for a living, like that's what you would want to do when you get off work too, is watch people just rate products that they found. So just anything mindless is really nice when I'm not working. And then also I have a lot of plants. I like taking care of plants and then taking naps and snuggling with my dog. So it's pretty basic, but just anything to take my mind off of these tragedies that families go through. But it definitely does affect you. Some days I wake up looking like I have black eyes because I have rings under my eyes, like you may dream about these families. On holidays, I've noticed, I was just talking about this the other day, on holidays, I no longer feel happy. I feel very sad because all I can think about are the families who have an empty seat at the table. So sometimes it gets overwhelming, but you just have to step back and think like I'm doing all that I can by helping these families, and they wouldn't want me to sit around being sad. So you have your good days and your bad days, but for the most part, it's just a lot of Rhett and Link and Bob's Burgers.
No wonder why we get along so well, because I like a lot of those things: naps, plants, cartoons. I have definitely seen a transformation in the type of content that I consume as well. When we started the podcast back in 2019, it was a lot of true crime podcasts and shows. And now, because I am researching so heavily or speaking with families and working with them, it is like I need to shut that side of myself off in order to be able to appreciate and enjoy an evening at home with my husband. And so like I need to watch something happy, like you mentioned. And I have said this before, but like I used to make fun of my dad and sister for watching Hallmark movies because they're so cheesy. Well, they had something figured out a long time ago, because sometimes that cheesiness really is what you need to just get you out of a funk after dealing with a really horrific story or finding some news out that you've been researching.
there's a reason that those movies are written the way they are, right? They're not written to be a cinematic experience or written that way because those writers just aren't the best writers. They're written that way to serve a purpose. And it definitely is something I think all three of us can connect on, is that we've all gone from consumer to content creator, and there is a shift in that. It doesn't mean that consuming it is wrong. It's just that there's an ethical way to consume it by paying attention to what you're consuming. I would like to champion the Murder Diaries in that we pay attention and cover missing cases and murder cases that are currently unsolved. And that's one great way, I think, ethically, to know that what you're watching is doing something really great on top of, do they work with families, and, how often can they work with families? Something I like to do in terms of like protecting my environment, both when I am doing the research for an episode, is I always have a picture of them. So when I am doing the research, I can see that picture. It kind of keeps me motivated. Or of course, if it's an episode where the family has chosen to work with us physically or be a part of it outside of the permission that we get, it just really is that reminder of like, this was a real person. And it's one of the only ways you can see their face today, especially if they are still missing. So that's kind of something that I like to do. But then, right, you have to sort of, with privilege that we're lucky to have, sort of clock out, because their families don't get to clock out. So if we can do that for them and protect our energy to help them and continue to advocate, even again, if it's just through simple research. And something we always tell them too is, we're going to tell the story so you don't have to. But what we want to talk to you about here is anything that needs clarification and who they were as a person, most importantly. And that was something that was mentioned earlier, is the joy of just being able to talk to these families about who they were. And we've had family members speak to us for 4 hours before just about this person. And this is well into the evening and early morning hours of like just who this person was and how much they loved them and everything. Like, we can read the articles and figure out what's happened, but of course, find out that if this is, true and correct. So we do hit a bit of the story, but we're like, we'll tell it so you don't have to for the 15 millionth time. And we'll amplify your voice in the spots and the things that you do want to say. Especially, I love including audio of when they discuss like who this person was. It's awesome.
That question that we ask a lot is, do you mind describing your loved one? Or will you tell us about your favorite memory of this person?
That's my favorite.
That's my favorite, but it's also their favorite. And that's actually feedback we've gotten countless times of, thank you for asking. Thank you for asking about who this person was rather than just what happened to them and jumping into the horrific details. Because you can really feel the energy shift as the family members talk about who they loved, who they miss, who they want justice for. And they could talk all day, and rightfully so. I could talk about my loved ones all day. I love them so much. And these are people who haven't seen some of their loved ones in years, or want to know where they are, or had something bad happen to them. And just to have a moment to remember the person for who they were, it's almost like they're teleported back to these memories with them, and they light up for just a little bit of time, and they have a smile on their face, and their voice is lighter. And it is really nice to be able to bring that part of the story, of this person's story, out, as well as telling exactly what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so interesting when you are interviewing families and you can almost see the grief lifted off of them when they get to talk about those good memories. And then I always feel horrible when I have to transition into the other questions. I'm like, I wish I could sit here with you all day and I would never have to talk about any of this other stuff. That's when it gets really hard. And I just explained to them, like, I know this is not what we want to talk about, but it is important. And I'm the same way. I have a really hard time with podcasts who just interview families and say like, okay, tell me everything. I don't think that's fair, because you're putting all of the responsibility on the family. You can read articles, like Paige was saying, you can find articles to see what happened, and you don't need them to retell you that whole story. You can ask them clarifying questions. You can ask maybe if there wasn't a lot of detail in the articles, you can say, can you tell me a little bit more about this? But to just ask such a broad question is really, one, setting the family up for failure, because there's no way that they're going to be able to remember every single important thing about this story in one interview. And it's also, again, the most importantly, putting all of that responsibility on them, which can just be so emotionally draining for them to have to tell this story again. And for what? Like Paige said, go read the articles, you know? And I've even worked with a family recently. This is my first time dealing with this situation. This family has done multiple podcasts, and I asked, if we could cover the story and all this stuff. And she just said she didn't want to be interviewed. She was like, I've done so many, I don't want to do them anymore. She's like, I'll send you over all the police reports. I'm like, okay.
We've encountered that. Yep. We ask permission to cover the case when possible, if we can connect with the family. And there have been a few instances where it's been said, yes, you have permission, but I'm not interested or unable to give an interview. And, we respect that. Like you said, when someone lives with this day in and day out for 10, 20, 30 years, it's their life. And it can take them right back to the day it happened. And we don't want to, our goal is never to re-trigger someone and re-traumatize them. And I think your process is probably pretty similar to ours. When we interview a family, obviously we send out the request for permission to cover. We explain what we're hoping to do in our coverage and ask them if an interview is possible. If they agree, we always send interview questions prior. And those interview questions are always detailed specifically to what we're able to find after the research has been done, what needs to be clarified, what would we like to get their perspective on. And we often include a note if there's anything that you would not like to discuss, please let us know. We'll skip right ahead. And we've actually had that happen where we talked about it in an interview with a Columbine survivor, where he got the interview questions. He was glad to speak with us, but we did have to adjust the interview questions prior to the interview. And he said he was grateful, but also surprised, because that has never happened before. Like, people weren't willing to accommodate him.
Which is insane.
Insane.
It's really important to be trauma informed. And listen, the three of us are not perfect, and we're learning and have learned along the way these trauma-informed ways that you can do this, because of the amazing families that are working so hard for their missing and murdered loved ones. Being on a podcast, quite frankly, is not something I think the majority of them even honestly want to do, really. They're not excited to be on a podcast, and definitely not under these circumstances. So making it as comfortable and seamless for them as possible is the idea. And yeah, sometimes they don't want to come on, like Natalie was saying and you were saying, and they just point us towards proper resources, and they're thankful for the coverage. We haven't really run into it where a family hasn't wanted us to cover it at all, if indeed their loved one is missing or unsolved. In many solved cases, there are families that would love to talk about that loved one, but then there are just as many families with solved cases that don't want to talk about it anymore. I have noticed specifically the solved ones where, yeah, you might consider there be a certain amount of justice, but that like there's something going on in the case that they're really trying to advocate for now. So through this experience and losing their loved one and having a case be, quote, closed, now they're searching for justice in another arena in the name of this loved one. They are often happy to and want to talk about their family, and there are appropriate conversations surrounding that, especially if they're involved. But yeah, mostly if it's solved, they kind of just want to go on and live their lives. And I think that that's where permission is important, and where focusing on missing or unsolved can be so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here at the Almond Joy Factory, where tropical vibes abound, we use soft, fresh-tasting coconut.
The crunchiest almonds and delicious chocolate candy.
Ah, but do you know what our most important ingredient is? Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts and something even way better than that. Yes, Almond Joy is made with almonds and joy.
Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. The NBA playoffs are here, and Michelob Ultra is getting you closer to the game than ever with courtside seats and more. Enter now at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access Courtside 2024 to 2025 sweepstakes. No purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 or older. Ends on July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/superior access/courtside for free entry deadlines and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
We've talked about how you've worked with some amazing organizations, specifically the Bridegan Foundation and Light the Way. Again, we've touched on that a little bit already, but can you share a little bit deeper on how you got involved with these nonprofits and the meaningful work that they're doing with families that have been affected by violent crime? And specifically, the Bexley Box project came out of the Bridegan Foundation. And we have talked about this before, but we would love to kind of remind our listeners, or for any new listeners, kind of talk about what it is and why it's so important.
I love talking about this, so I will, of course, get into detail. So I'll start with the Bridegan Foundation because that's the first organization that I started working with. So after Moms in Mystery started working with Kirsten, we stayed in touch with her, of course, and we were like, what are some other things that you're wanting to do? Because we knew it was important for her to honor Jared and continue his legacy of helping others. So she said that she wanted to start the Bexley Box program. And what that is it's not a box. It's like a trunk. It has handles. I know Natalie has seen one in person at True Crime Podcast Festival.
They're really well made. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but they look incredible and they have a great purpose to serve. So I'll let you continue, but I just wanted to jump in.
I think that just by the name, you're like, oh, it's just like a box of goodies. But Kirsten has done the most amazing job curating it. So basically, it's a white wooden trunk and it is filled with everything that a police department could need if they have a child come to the police department under stressful situations. And the reason that this came about was, and if you've listened to the Murder Diaries episode, Jared was allegedly ambushed and murdered by a hitman when Bexley, who was 2.5 years old at the time, was in the backseat of the car. And a Good Samaritan found Jared because it was just in the middle of a roadway, and found Bexley in the backseat, took her out of her car seat and called the police. And then Bexley was taken to the police department. But the police department didn't have anything for Bexley. And this is not something I'd ever thought about before, but it's very common for police departments to bring children in these kinds of situations, and then there's nothing for them there. And because of the chaos of it all, Kirsten didn't know where Jared was. He was on his way home with Bexley. By the time the police finally were able to talk to her. Some time had passed. And then she also lived like an hour away, so by the time she got to the police station, Bexley had been there without any comforting items or necessities for probably a couple hours. And so in the tragedy of losing Jared and in her grief and all those things, Kirsten thought, what can I do so that no child has to go through this again? And so that's when she came up with the Bexley Box, and she curated it to include, I want to say there's like $500 to $600 worth of items on the inside of each box. There are items for children of all ages, from like babies to teens, or I would say more like preteens, but it includes snacks, formula, sippy cups, blankets, stuffed animals, toys, books, coloring books, like everything you can imagine. And we donate these boxes to police departments across the country. We have more than 50. I'm about to place one at the end of this month in Indianapolis after Advocacy Con. And then with working on Molly's case, I became friends with the detective. And now Sunnyvale is getting a Bexley Box as well.
Amazing.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So we also have one with Homeland Security, which was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So those boxes go for free to the police departments. They keep them in their area. And if any children come in, they're allowed to go to the box, pick out whatever they want. They're allowed to keep it. And then we refill them for free as well. That has been just so truly incredible. And Kirsten asked me, Melissa, and Mandy for Moms and Mysteries to be on the board, which was such an honor. And all of Jared's siblings are on the board. He has 2 brothers and 1 sister. And so through that, I've gotten to know them, and they're incredible people. So the foundation is the Bridegan Foundation. And then what we do is we have the Bexley Boxes. So yeah, that is just so incredible. And the fact that Kirsten thought to do that, and again, just honoring Jared's legacy and making sure that other children aren't okay. And it was really surprising to learn that these police departments don't have things for children. And then when we contact police departments to ask if they want a Bexley Box, they will be like, oh my gosh, yes, we don't have anything for children. Or like, we never thought about this. And so many times we have heard this. They'll say, yes, because when we get a child in here, we'll just send a detective to run to like Dollar General and get something, or like Bexley, she was in diapers, and they didn't have diapers. So she's just sitting there in like a dirty diaper or, so you just don't think about these things, but it can make a world of difference. And then Kirsten, she's just so thoughtful. I just love her so much. Again, she has changed my life. And I tell her this all the time. I'm like, you have changed my life. I get goosebumps every time I think about it. Like, she has just been so incredible and through everything she's been through to help other people. But she also worked with a social worker, and each Bexley Box comes with multiple laminated cards for how people should interact with children who are going through tragedy. It's just very amazing and just such a wonderful organization. And we can't wait to get a box in every state. And if you go to the website, Kirsten has made this really cool graphic where she has highlighted like every state that has a Bexley Box. And then for Light the Way, so I had known about Light the Way for a couple since they started. One case that has always been near and dear to my heart is the disappearance of Oakley Carlson. And they are her advocates. Shayna from Light the Way, she's the founder. She works really closely with Oakley's foster parents, aka her true family. And I remember covering Oakley's case and then for a podcast, not ever interacting with Light the Way, but I used their website for my research. And then I just started following them and I'd see them post about other things. And then we just kind of got connected. They would join like my live research sessions, things like that. And so we just slowly became friends. But then I was working on this disappearance out of Arkansas, and it was a really complicated case. And I was like, I don't think I can handle this by myself. Like, I tried to for a couple months, and it was just kind of above my knowledge at the time. This because I started working on it in October of 2023. I still remember when I got the email. I was on vacation with Jess, who has worked for Murder Diaries. We were on one of our yearly cross-country road trips, and I got an email about this case. I started working on it, and I worked on it until January. And then I was like, I cannot do this on my own. So I reached out to Light the Way, and I said, Are you taking on any new cases? And if so, could you help me with this one? Because I need advice. Like, it was more than I was used to at the time working with. And to just tell you how complicated this case is, I started working on it October 23. A podcast episode just came out this week.
Wow.
So it took a year and a half to work on this case. And so they started helping. We met with the family together. And then through that, I was like, I could really learn a lot from you. Because again, I only knew about the podcasting. I could help families with podcasting all day, but some families need more than that. And I would say all families need more than that. But some families need like a lot more help because of just corruption from police or things like that. And this was one of those. And so they said yes. And then they asked if I would be a volunteer for them. And I was the first ever person that they asked. So that was really an honor because they were nervous to let someone else in, but they did. And so I've been working with them since then. And then we've grown really close. And they asked me to be their media specialist. So now I'm no longer a volunteer. I'm a media specialist. And I help a lot of families with press releases and trying to get media coverage and things like that. And we also just joined forces with the Gabby Petito Foundation. So I kind of technically work for the Gabby Petito Foundation as well. And that's been a really great partnership because Light the Way, like 99% of the people that we help are the families of missing loved ones. And of course, the Gabby Petito Foundation, they focus on two efforts: domestic violence prevention and awareness, and then missing persons. So to have both combined resources and knowledge has just been incredible and so helpful for the families. And we're doing like monthly webinars where we help educate victims' families. Like last night, we hosted one on victims' rights with a victims' rights attorney, which was so fascinating because I'm sure you've come across this. One of the ways that families need help is legal advice. And obviously, we can't provide that for them. And victims' rights is kind of like an elusive topic, like it's very difficult. Like we've talked about that mother that we've both been working with. I have tried my hardest to find an attorney to talk to her, and she's been trying for years. She can't even get past a secretary to talk to an attorney, So it's very difficult for families to learn about their rights, especially with unsolved cases. And so that was just so amazing to be able to talk about that. And then we also did one last month where we talked about ways that families can work with creators and make sure that their rights they're not being taken advantage of, and let them know that they have rights with that and they can tell because not everybody is like you two.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So a lot of people do just meet with families and say, tell me everything. And families are not comfortable with that. Some families don't get the opportunity to look at any research, or some podcasts even put off the record information out there. Like the amount of things that these families have been through is just astounding. And so I wanted to let families know that they have rights and they can say no to things and things like that. So that's been really lovely to be able to educate families and let them know that they have rights and don't have to be taken advantage of.
I feel like that's such a natural segue to what you're going to be doing in a couple of weeks too. You have the Advocacy Con coming up. You have your advocate blueprint being assembled at the moment, which will be a great resource for a number of families who are looking for a little bit of guidance into how to get any type of media coverage, but also involvement in what the police are uncovering about their loved one's case.
In early April, my company, True Crime Research Training, released a new program. And this program is specifically for families and it's called the Advocacy Blueprint. And basically, it's a comprehensive program that teaches families how to self-advocate for themselves and their loved one. So with True Crime Research Training, which was formerly True Crime Podcast Training, we just changed the name to be more inclusive to let people know that it's not just for podcasts. But long story short, this all came about because one of my students, Steve Patton, came to me about a year ago, and he wanted to take the research course to learn how to advocate and to research his own daughter's murder. And that taught me that there's a need out there that wasn't being met, because the training course was helpful to him, but it was more geared towards like people who want to work in podcasting and not necessarily for families who want to advocate for their loved one. So I was like, there's a need here that's not being met. I'm also learning so much advocacy and tips that I want to share. And so I asked Steve and his wonderful wife, Renee, if they would like to partner on a program together. And so for months, we spent time putting together the advocacy blueprint, which covers basically everything from, social media to navigating the legal system, which some families are not currently going through, but maybe they will in the future. And then there's also families who are going through that. There's also resources on grief and those kinds of things. And then there's just a lot of advocacy tips, like how to try and get a free billboard or, those kinds. A lot of things that I've just learned that help families, but that no one is really, unless a family is connected to someone who knows these things, there's not really anything out there to help them learn these things. So that's where that all came from. And I'm just so proud of the advocacy blueprint. We've had a couple families help test it, and they just said that it was so helpful. And there are so many things that they hadn't thought of. And also to have Steve and Renee, we filmed for 3.5 hours with them where they talked about, there's a video in the beginning of the advocacy blueprint where they talk about the things that they wish they knew when they started this process. And that was just so eye-opening for them to talk about how the legal system is not what we've been taught it is. And I think a lot of families learn that pretty quickly when they start dealing with law enforcement. But just talking about their experiences and what they've been through and what they wish they did differently, what they did that worked. And so that was just so eye-opening. And I just really hope that it helps other families and that they can learn ways to advocate for themselves, because unfortunately, some people charge money to help advocate for families. And then also, I want to help every single family possible, but there's not enough hours in the day. So if I can create something where they can help themselves, they don't have to rely on other people, because I know you know this, but so many families, in order to do anything advocacy related, they have to rely on other people. To get a podcast episode out, they have to rely on a podcast, either reaching out to them or saying yes to them, or even putting it out there. To get the case solved, they have to rely on the police doing their jobs. So it's so many things where these families are relying on others, and they're so like chomping at the bit to be able to like get stuff done, but they're just being held back. And I'm just so hopeful that this program will help them learn different tools that they can use without relying on other people. And I just think that that's going to be so empowering. And I'm just so happy that this has come together. And my business partner, Whitney, has been incredible helping with that. And then, of course, Steve and Renee, who I'm going to meet at AdvocacyCon, and I'm so excited. And yeah, I'm really hopeful that this will help. Even just one person will make it all worth it.
I think that's something I learned very quickly, especially researching cases, is that there really is a lot that's kind of put onto the families to get cases solved, because they have to depend on other people. They're kind of on their time clock. So if families want to get things done, I guess is what I'm trying to say, they have to do it themselves. Then they end up, for example, like literally taking leave from jobs or quitting jobs because this becomes all consuming to try to get it done. And it's so kinesthetic, where it's so trial and error to even figure out when they're trying to do it on their own, because there really isn't anything that's guiding them. And then, it's not a movie where law enforcement is like working around the clock to solve a case. Sometimes that happens. And I think it depends on the case and what's out there and what's available to them to make them feel like they have the resources and the information to solve something, for example. But right, if you want that billboard, if you want all of these things, the family ends up having to do them. And it's so confusing. I wouldn't even know where to start. So this blueprint sounds amazing. What does accessing this blueprint look like?
Yeah, definitely. I do want to mention real quick when you said, they wouldn't even know where to start. One thing that we did with the blueprint was include as many email templates as we could just to help them with that as well. I mean,
Great.
we work with families of all ages. We work with families who are in their 20s. We work with families who are in their 70s. I've even worked with some people who are in their 80s. So it's really important to help families with all kinds of different tools, and so I think that will be helpful. So with the advocacy blueprint, all we ask is that people go to our website, which is truecrimeresearchtraining.com. And then there's a section for the family program. And then all they'll have to do is just fill out a super brief form. And then once we get that, we'll set up an account for them. And then we'll send them the directions on how to log in. And they'll have forever access to the program. We don't have any type of expiration. And also, we've made the program so that they can jump around, right? Because maybe we have a family who, unfortunately, there aren't any charges in the case. So they're not necessarily worried about the navigating the legal system section. So maybe they just want to skip over that, or maybe they want to click on it, but just read through it a little bit. So they don't have to go through it in order or anything like that. There are videos. We want to make more videos. We will in the future. We're trying to get this out so that it can be accessed. Right now, it's quite a bit of text, but there's downloadable PDFs and email templates and all kinds of things. And then again, they'll have access to this at all times. So they don't need to worry about like, oh, I have to read all of this at once. They can really digest it and come back to it and things like that. So yeah, we are not charging for the program. I don't feel comfortable charging families. We just have to have that form on there to kind of protect whoever we're giving accounts to. But there's no charge, and we just really want it to help people. We encourage, if you know someone that you think that this will help, please have them reach out to us. We're not like capping it, like only 100 people get access. Like, no, we really want this to help as many people as possible. So please send them our way. And then definitely give feedback if there's anything missing or something that needs more explanation. It's a very small team working on this. So I know that there's things that we can grow. And of course, we'll be changing this as we learn more too, right? Like you learn more about advocacy. I put the course together and everything. And then Steve Patton went through it and he was like, hey, we don't even have a section on tip campaigns. And I was like, I have never heard of such a thing. I've been doing this for 9 years. And he took a screenshot of this book that he has. And he was like, you can actually, families can host their own tip campaigns and things like, kind of like Unsolved Mysteries has that, And so I was like, well, let's add it, And so we created a whole section on it. So there's always things that I'm going to miss. And I'm always happy to add things. And I'm sure I'm going to go to AdvocacyCon, learn stuff, and then be like in my hotel room, like, I got to add a section.
Or I'm sure people will take the course, like you said, Steve did, and they're going to be like, hey, wait, what about this? So it's going to be an ever evolving program, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're working with people, I think it is so important to be comfortable being the one who knows and can help, but also be comfortable learning with them and through them. That's incredibly important. I would love to tell our listeners where they can support any of these causes and efforts and how they can stay connected with you, Haley.
Yeah, I would love if people followed me on Instagram at Haley Gray Research. That's HALEYGRAY Research. I post quite a few different things. I do advocacy tips for families and for people who are wanting to help families. I also post about cases that I'm working on, causes that I'm working on, those kinds of things. And then also I have a presence over on LinkedIn. It's just Haley Gray over there. Very similar advocacy tips, those kinds of things. And then also you can follow True Crime Research Training on Instagram. Yeah, but those are the main ones. And you can see what podcasts I'm working with. You can also follow the Bridegan Foundation. It is the Bridegan Foundation. And you can also follow Justice for Jared, which is linked on the Bridegan Foundation. And then Light the Way is light_the_way_22. And you can follow our journey working with the Gabby Petito Foundation and the cases that we're helping families on and things like that. So there's quite a bit. I mean, there's been a lot of updates lately in cases. And so we try to post those as well. I mean, this morning I found out that one of the cases I advocate for, the missing person, was found. So not the best news, but at least they have answers now. So there's always something going on Instagram.
Awesome. And that's maybe where they can also see if and when there's calls for fundraising and donations and ways to best support that as well. Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always fundraising for the Gabby Petito Foundation. Also always fundraising for Bexley Box. I've never done this, but maybe in the future, if I'm working with a family that really needs some fundraising for advocacy efforts, that could be an option as well. But, there's always people who need help. And also, if anyone's looking for ways that they can help, maybe not monetarily, I always have things that I can suggest people do, like always ways for people to help if you want to get involved.
Well, I guess that's about it for today. Thank you so much for everything, Haley. We loved talking to you. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I really believe that our listeners are going to get a lot out of what you had to say. And maybe you'll have a few new students in your research training course.
Yes, thank you for everything you shared today. And thank you for the contributions that you have made for the Murder Diaries.
Of course, it's my honor to help families. And I always want to get them as much coverage as possible, So, and I always appreciate you saying yes to helping these families. I mean, not everyone is like that. And I know that all of the families that have worked with you have just loved you so much. And I'm just so thankful for you both.
Make sure to follow us on all of our socials. And remember, if you want to listen ad-free, head over to patreon.com/themurderdiariespod. And until then,
stay safe.
Bye. Spring is here, and it's time for some spring cleaning. HomeAglow is here to deliver consistent and affordable support for you, too, to get your spring cleaning done. HomeAglow is a top-rated service platform dedicated to making your space clean and tidy. Their website allows you to book online, which allows you to instantly schedule a cleaner in your area for a special occasion, that party you're getting ready to host, or just to book some regular help to take some things off your plate. What's comforting is that cleaners have to pass a rigorous certification process, and they also have to maintain a 4.8-star average platform rating. We know you're going to love your cleaners, so make sure you rate them really well too. HomeAglow is also a fantastic way to support the cleaners in your community because 100% of the cleaning fees and tips go directly to the cleaner that you hire through HomeAglow. With that, we are so thankful that this episode is brought to you in part by HomeAglow. Now let's talk about their Forever Clean membership. Schedule your cleaning by simply going to HomeAglow's website, choose the day and time you're looking for, and how long you want the cleaner to clean for. Then you'll get matched with a cleaner. You can schedule as quickly as this week or get something on the calendar for next month to check it off your to-do list early. On the website, you'll be able to check out photos and reviews of background-checked cleaners before booking the right cleaner for you. The best part is that Forever Clean membership we talked about, which saves you $30 an hour on all future cleanings. You can book unlimited cleanings starting at $19 an hour, backed by HomeAglow's happiness guarantee. HomeAglow services are only available in the US. Take cleaning off your plate by using HomeAglow. Head to homeaglow.com/diaries to get your first 3 hours of cleaning for only $19.